Hello. Thank you so much for joining Parkinson Voice Project for today's webinar, which is Living with Parkinson's, Dispelling the Biggest Myth. Do you know what the biggest myth is to Parkinson's? I am going to talk to you about that, but first I want to tell you that Parkinson Voice Project is a nonprofit organization. We're located in Richardson, Texas. Our mission is to help people with Parkinson's regain and retain their speech and their swallowing. With me on the webinar are Lisa and Julie, two of my assistants. If y'all want to say hello. Hi. Thank you for helping us out. Julie will be running the PowerPoint and the videos, and then Lisa will be monitoring the Q&A. You can certainly type questions into the Q&A. This lecture, we expect it to be about an hour, but I honestly am happy to stay on as long as needed to answer your questions. So thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited to share this information with you. Whether you are new to Parkinson Voice Project and Speak Out Therapy, or you've been in our program for a long time, we have some new videos that will show you. And well, let's go ahead and get started. At the end of this video, we will have a survey that will pop up. So it would be very helpful to us if you will take just a few minutes to answer the questions and give us some feedback. We always want to do a better job. So today we are dispelling the biggest myth related to Parkinson's. The New Oxford English Dictionary defines a myth as a widely held but false belief or idea. So think about that, a widely held but false belief or idea. If you scour the internet looking for information related to Parkinson's, you're going to see words like progressive, degenerative, incurable, worsens over time. And if you focus on those words, progressive, degenerative, incurable, worsens over time, you could get pretty depressed about it. But the thing is that so it makes you think that with Parkinson's, you have no control over the disorder, that you're kind of on this downward spiral and there's nothing that you can do about it. And that's the myth. It's false. It's not true. People with Parkinson's have a lot more control over their movements than they might think. And the information that I'm going to share with you today is going to help you with that. You know, thinking of Parkinson's as progressive, degenerative, incurable, and all of that, it can be very damaging when you think that you have no control over something. And by the way, when I look down, I've got my notes here. I'm not that good at memorizing things, so I do have my cheat sheet here. But when we think that we don't have any control over something, it's very damaging. It's kind of paralyzing. We can become apathetic. We can become depressed. It's like this weight pulling us down. It moves us into inaction, right? And we lose hope. And so, I've been working next year. Parkinson Voice Project will be celebrating its 20th anniversary. I'm very proud of that, but I've been working on this project for going on 26 years. And one of the reasons that I started this organization is that I want to help you and your families to understand that you do have much more control over Parkinson's. My specialty is improving speech and swallowing, but the concepts of how we improve speech and swallowing in Parkinson's, it's going to help you in other areas of your life. Okay. Some people are very skeptical. They go, well, You say that I have more control, but I don't believe you. So we are going to show you a video. This is a video of George. George has been in our program at Parkinson Voice Project almost since the beginning. He's been in the program since 2007. You are going to see George the day that we first met him. You're going to see him after several weeks of speech therapy. This was actually before the Speak Out Therapy program was developed. We were using a different technique. And then you will see another video after he went through Speak Out, and then you'll see him several years later. So let's go ahead and watch that video. And I want you to think about it. Think of those words: progressive, degenerative, gets worse over time. And now look at George.
Tell me your full name.
George Holloway Candler.
You've now completed the voice treatment. Do you notice a change in your voice or speech?
I don't choke eating a hamburger from time to time.
Make sure I'm doing my exercises as nearly daily as possible. It may be only 5 days a week, but I do it as nearly daily as possible. And that is extremely important.
My full name is George Holloway Candler.
Tell me how you maintain the strength of your voice. What's your routine?
Physical exercise and voice exercise are essential because people for many years have gone, "What, you have Parkinson's?" And I can say, yes, I do. But it is crucial that you do this regularly. And I know if I slide, I start choking. My standard has been a certain burger or biscuit that I have. And when I start to choke on that, I know, whoops, got to get back in and do this thoroughly.
So you can start to see a difference pretty quickly if you stop for how many days?
3 days.
Again, how long?
3 days.
3 days. So if you don't do your speak out exercises for 3 days, you can start to tell it.
I then need to watch out for the biscuit. I can speak, you can hear me, and this is why.
Now, if you haven't been to Parkinson Voice Project, you might think, oh, well, they just picked the very best video they could find and that George's situation is very unique. But I want you to know that it's not unique. The principles you will learn in this lecture, if you understand them, if you embrace them, then you really can live a better life with Parkinson's. Now, is George's life perfect? No, it's not perfect. He mentioned to you that he's got to keep up with his exercises, and if he doesn't do them for a few days, he can start to tell a difference in his speech and in his swallowing. He's got to watch out for that biscuit. But George is using managing Parkinson's with the concepts that we will learn today. So I'm very excited to share them with you. Now, with Parkinson's, we have to be proactive. Proactive, not reactive. Very important. We have to play offense, not defense. Very important. You want to grab hold of every little thing that you can control with Parkinson's and focus all of your energy on that. And you want to learn to be purposeful and deliberate and intentional. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. Now, to start taking control of Parkinson's, it is very important that you know the difference, that you learn the difference between the automatic motor system and the intentional motor system. I'm going to show you a diagram, but not yet. Let me explain a couple things first. Humans have two motor systems. The automatic motor system, which is also referred to as the pyramidal system. The extrapyramidal system. Don't have to worry about that. Just call it the automatic motor system. Okay, two motor systems, automatic and intentional, extrapyramidal and pyramidal. Okay. The automatic motor system is responsible for anything that you do without conscious effort. Anything you do where you really don't have to think about it. So I'm going to give you some examples of automatic movements. I want you to think back to before you had Parkinson's, okay? Think back to when you had Parkinson's. When you were walking, you would swing your arms. You didn't have to tell yourself to swing your arms. It just happened automatically. You weren't even probably aware that you were doing it. So swinging the arms when we walk is an automatic movement. Getting out of a chair. Getting out of a chair is normally an automatic movement. If I were to get out of my chair, I would just, get up and I would start walking. I'm not thinking about what my feet are doing. It's just automatic. Okay. So normally getting out of a chair would be controlled by the automatic motor system. Another example, picking up your fork when you're going to eat, or me picking up my glass. Those are automatic movements. And again, we're thinking back to before Parkinson's, okay? Picking up the fork, getting the food, cutting your steak, all of that would be automatic. Scratching your head, that is an automatic movement. Putting on your seatbelt, think about, you would just get in the car, grab the seatbelt, put it on. You might be talking at the same time. You're not really thinking about it. If you were taking a walk in the evening and your neighbor said hi to you, you would just automatically raise your hand up and say hi, and you wouldn't put too much thought into it. And one more example, before Parkinson's, I bet you probably could walk down the street, talk to a friend, and eat an ice cream cone all at the same time. You wouldn't have to think about what your feet were doing or bringing the ice cream to your mouth or talking to your friend. All of those things are automatic. Now, what is happening with Parkinson's though? With Parkinson's, things are not so automatic, right? Your arms may not be swinging when you walk. When you get out of a chair, do you have to tell yourself, I've got to scoot to the edge of my chair, put my hands on my armrest, push myself up, nose to toes? Maybe the physical therapist tells you that, and then maybe get your balance and then start walking, okay? Because it's not automatic anymore. When you're at the dinner table now with Parkinson's, you might have to really think about picking up your fork. When you're cutting your meat, the movements might be real small and you might have to really think about it. It's not automatic. It might be challenging to have a conversation. I hear a lot of people say that. They go out to dinner with friends and it's hard for them to concentrate on the conversation and concentrate on eating at the same time because it's no longer automatic. Okay. When you scratch your head, like if I put my hand up here, when you put your hand up, maybe the movement is slower, might be a little bit stiff. It's not automatic anymore. I'm just trying to give you lots and lots of examples. When you get into the car to put your seatbelt on, you might have to really think about grabbing the seatbelt and then pulling it down. And if someone waves to you in the evening, you're taking a walk, it may not be so easy. You're concentrating on walking, so it may not be so easy for you to put your hand up and say hi back, or it might be a little bit slower. And then, walking down the street, eating an ice cream cone, and talking all at the same time might be impossible with Parkinson's. Okay, now hang in there with me. I'm telling you a lot of things that are going wrong, but I'm going to share some good news with you. So hang in there with me. I want to explain why people with Parkinson's are struggling with the automatic movements. And so now I'd like for Julie to put up the diagram of the two motor systems. Now, I'm sure you have heard of dopamine. Okay, you have heard of dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter. Okay, it's a neurotransmitter that helps. It helps with the planning and the controlling of automatic movements, okay? There are billions of neurons in the brain, and they are firing and they are talking to each other. But in the automatic motor system, the impulses, they need dopamine. By the time someone has any symptoms of Parkinson's, they have already lost 60 to 80% of their dopamine producing cells. Look at this diagram now. Look at the diagram on the left, the automatic motor system, okay? That's automatic, and on the right is the intentional motor system. Now, what happens is the impulses start at the top in both motor systems. They start at the cortex, and the impulses travel down to the brainstem, okay? In the automatic motor system, do you see all of those green lines? Those green lines represent that the impulses are traveling down, but as they are going down, they are stopping to communicate to various structures in the brain. Now, when the impulses get to the area of the brain, do you see where it says the substantia nigra? Those small purple kidney-shaped structures, the substantia nigra. That's where dopamine is, okay? When the impulses travel down and they get to where dopamine is supposed to be, they are having trouble making it the rest of the way down in a smooth and coordinated way. Let me say that again. So by the time someone has any symptoms of Parkinson's, they have lost 60 to 80% of their dopamine producing cells. Dopamine is supposed to be in the substantia nigra. So when you are producing any movement that is automatic, okay, the impulses are firing down. When they get to the substantia nigra, because there's not enough dopamine, they don't know what to do. That's why when somebody's walking with Parkinson's, their walk may not be as smooth as it used to be, okay? Because it gets to the substantia nigra, there's not enough dopamine, and they don't know what to do, okay? So it's not as smooth. But this is the good news. I want you to look at the intentional motor system. And this is normal. Humans have two motor systems, automatic and intentional. Notice the blue lines in the intentional motor system. These represent the impulses traveling down. They kind of, in the intentional motor system, they kind of bypass the area where dopamine is supposed to be. So the intentional motor system is not as dependent on dopamine as the automatic motor system. And this is the good news, and I'm going to give you many examples. So what this means is that when people with Parkinson's are purposeful and deliberate and intentional, what they're doing is they are activating the intentional motor system that is not as dependent on dopamine, and that's how they are able to produce a great voice like George, and how they are able to walk better and reduce their risk of falls, and how they're able to put on their seatbelt and all of that. Let's go ahead and go full screen. Okay, so intent is the key to managing Parkinson's. I think it is the most important word, and yet you don't hear that when you search for for information about Parkinson's. Now, the wonderful thing about intent is that all of us have used intent all our lives. When you went on a job interview, I bet you made a point to stand up straighter, make good eye contact, have a nice handshake. You were using intent, okay? When you're driving, is driving automatic or intentional? A lot of times driving can be automatic. I live in Dallas and I have family in San Antonio, which is about a 4.5 hour drive. And I hate to say it, that sometimes I'm driving and I get to Waco and I go, oh, wow, how'd I get here? Because I was using my automatic motor system. But if I'm driving on the freeway and all of a sudden I get caught in a downpour, or I get stuck between an 18-wheeler and a concrete barrier, I shift from my automatic motor system to my intentional motor system. What do? I turn off the radio. I put both hands on the wheel. I might even lean forward a little bit. I'm focused. I'm concentrating. Okay, so I'm using intent. Whenever we are learning a new skill, so think about a child or a young child, let's say a 4-year-old, learning how to dribble a ball. When a child is learning a new skill, they're using a lot of intent. Okay, imagine this 4-year-old trying to dribble the ball. Okay, they're using the intentional motor system. The more they practice the skill, what happens is it goes from intentional to automatic. So that then when the child is now a teenager, they're dribbling down the court, they're not even really thinking about it. It has become automatic. Okay? Learning to play the piano. When someone's learning to play the piano at first, it's very deliberate. They're really concentrating. They're using the intentional motor system. And then the more they practice, the better they get at it. Playing the piano becomes automatic. Unless, let's say, they're learning a very difficult piece and they're really concentrating on it. I grew up playing the piano, so I know about that. I can play scales very well, and I'm not really thinking about it. But if I pull out my Mozart book, I'm going to have to concentrate on it, especially since I haven't played piano in a while. So it's very interesting that when we're babies, we're using intent. And then as we learn the skill, it becomes automatic. And dopamine plays a very important role in that. If you practice with me online, you know that I am a new grandmother. I now have 2 grandchildren, but it was very fascinating to me to watch my first grandchild as he was developing new skills. And I thought that I have a couple of videos to show you that will help you to understand intent and automatic. The first video is of Harvey crawling. So you're going to see Harvey, and at first he's using a lot of intent. He's having to really think about where his arms and his legs are going. But then you're going to see how it becomes automatic. So watch this video. If we can go full screen. Okay, so let's talk about this. So the first one, Harvey was using his intentional motor system, really having to think about it. Okay, and then as he learned the skill, it became automatic. Harvey has always dopamine, we think. And so the skill was able to become automatic. He wasn't thinking about what his legs were doing. He was just having fun. Okay, let me show you another example. Before we show the video, let me just tell you that it's a video of Harvey climbing up the stairs, but I called my daughter and I said, I have a great video of Harvey intentionally climbing up the stairs, but I need a video of him automatically climbing up the stairs. Well, he's about 18 months now, and you'll see my daughter trying to get him to climb up the stairs, and he's going like, why do you want me to do this? So watch this video, an example of intent first, and then it becomes automatic. Okay. So you noticed in the first video, he was using his intentional motor system. He was purposeful, deliberate, really having to work hard. And in the second one, it was pretty easy for him. So the skill had shifted from the intentional motor system to the automatic motor system. And so now what I want to do is give you some examples of how speech is normally automatic, okay? Normally automatic. So normally volume, our volume, we can adjust our volume automatically. So for example, if I were to go into a noisy restaurant, okay, I would automatically adjust my volume to an appropriate level where I wasn't really yelling, but people could hear me, okay? But with Parkinson's, what happens? A lot of people with Parkinson's think that they are speaking louder than they really are. So they go into a restaurant and they feel like they're almost yelling. They're trying to make themselves understood, and people are still leaning forward, right? So they are not automatically increasing their volume. And they're not automatically doing that because there is not enough dopamine, and the automatic motor system is highly dependent on dopamine. Now, if I were to go into a library or I were to go into a church, I would automatically lower my volume to an appropriate level so that if I whispered something to my husband, he would be able to hear me. Or if I said, can you pass that book? It would be an appropriate volume. It wouldn't be too loud. It wouldn't be too soft. It would be the right volume. That's because I'm using dopamine and I am automatically adjusting my volume. But somebody with Parkinson's would have a more difficult time with that. And the other thing that I want to explain, and I think this is fascinating, is that humans normally, automatically, take the amount of breath they need for the words that they're about to speak. Now think about that. Humans normally take the appropriate amount of breath they need for the words that they are about to speak. So if I'm taking a walk in the evening and I see my neighbor and I say, hi, I don't have to tell myself, Samantha, you only need to take a tiny breath because you're only going to say one word. Hi. All right. By the same token, as I am presenting to all of you, I am not having to really think about my breath at all. I'm not having to tell myself, Samantha, you're about to say 7 words on one breath. Make sure you take a deep enough breath so you can make it all the way to the end of your sentence. It's happening automatically. It's controlled by the automatic motor system. But what's happening with Parkinson's? With Parkinson's, people are trailing off at the ends of their sentences. They're not taking automatically, they are not automatically taking the appropriate amount of breath they need. And so it's more challenging. So hopefully you are starting to understand the difference between the automatic motor system and the intentional motor system. So when people with Parkinson's speak with intent, when they really think about it, when they think about their swallowing, when they think about their walking, and I say, walk like you're the boss or walk like you're in the military, then all of a sudden, instead of taking the small steps, they are taking more normal steps. Their balance is better. They're eating better. Everything's happening because they are learning to use the intentional motor system. Now, I want to explain something though. So for Harvey, he started out with intentional movements, and as he practiced those skills, they became automatic, okay? And that's what happens with humans. But when somebody doesn't have enough dopamine, if we take the dopamine away, most of it, 60 to 80% of it, then what has to happen is those movements that had become automatic now need to become intentional. So we need to go back to intentional movements. And that's how it is with Parkinson's. Now you might say, well, this is terrible. I mean, this is, terrible. I'm going to have to think about it all the time. But I want you to consider this. Of all the neurological conditions, Parkinson's is the one that you truly do have more control over. If you think of, for example, somebody that had a stroke and they were paralyzed on one side, it wouldn't matter how much that person tried, okay? How deliberate they were, how intentional they were. If they were paralyzed, they're not going to be able to get that side of the body to move. It's not that way with Parkinson's. The more intentional you are, the more you concentrate, the more deliberate you are, you can do pretty much. I mean, you can make those movements more normal. Other disorders, like let's say Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS, weakens all of the muscles. That doesn't happen with Parkinson's. The muscles only become weak in Parkinson's because the person is not using the muscles to their full capacity. So for example, if somebody continually walks with tiny steps, then their leg muscles are going to become weak. But Parkinson's isn't attacking the muscles and making them weak like it does in other neurological disorders. So when the more somebody exercises and the more they learn to walk with intent, then they do have control over their walking. Now, you might say, okay, well, this is great. I will just start doing everything with intent. And that would be wonderful. But there are two big challenges that I need to tell you about. And this is what makes treating Parkinson's so challenging. It's also why I'm going to encourage all of you with Parkinson's to be working with a speech language pathologist and to be working with a physical therapist that specializes in Parkinson's. So it would be great to say, I'm just going to use intent. I mean, I'm using intent right now when I'm giving this presentation, but there are two challenges related to Parkinson's that I need you to know about. I think a lot of people don't realize them. The first one is that Parkinson's is characterized by a sensory deficit disorder. What that means is that movements do not feel the way they're really working. Let's go full screen. So when somebody with Parkinson's is saying something, they have a sensory deficit disorder, they feel like their voice sounds normal. And yet their spouse is going, what? What'd you say? I can't hear you. You're mumbling. And then the person with Parkinson's says, it's not me, it's your hearing. Okay, and if you're attending this with your spouse, maybe you looked at each other and kind of laughed because maybe that sounded familiar. But there is a sensory deficit associated with Parkinson's. People with Parkinson's, when they're talking, it doesn't feel to them like it really sounds to everybody else. In fact, a lot of people, when I'm working with them, they'll say, but, and they're using a great voice, they're speaking with intent. They'll say, oh, it sounds too loud. And I say, no, it doesn't sound too loud. It feels too loud. Now, the problem, and the same thing with the walking. I've had patients say, for the past 30 years, I've taken a walk with my spouse in the evenings. And for some reason, I feel like I can't keep up with her anymore. So what's happening is that the steps feel like they're normal, but they're too small. So he recognizes that he's not keeping up with his wife like he used to in the walking, but it's puzzling to him because the movements, the walking feels like it's normal. So if you don't If you can't hear your voice and see your movements the way that they really are, if they feel different to you than they really are, then what's going to happen is people are going to wait too long to get treated. They're not going to think they have a problem. It's going to cause a lot of friction. If your wife is always saying, or your husband is always saying, you're mumbling, I can't hear you, and you feel that your voice is fine, then that causes a lot of friction. And so it is critical that people with Parkinson's are working with a speech language pathologist and a physical therapist, even if you don't feel that you have a problem. So I like to say, have a speech evaluation, have a physical therapy evaluation, make sure it's somebody who specializes in Parkinson's, okay? And find out if treatment would help you, okay? But in treatment, that's where we can help you to become more aware, to realize that how your walking is and how your speech is may feel very different to you. The second challenge related to Parkinson's is that besides impacting our automatic movements, okay, dopamine also affects our motivation and our drive. And this is a big problem for people with Parkinson's. People with Parkinson's know that they need to exercise, that their life would be better, they would be stronger, they would reduce their falls if they exercise. They know that their speech is better when they warm up their voice, when they do their exercises. But people with Parkinson's are not motivated to do what they need to do. And that is a big problem. And unfortunately, some family members, if they don't understand how dopamine impacts motivation and drive, they might think of the person as being stubborn or even lazy. They could get very frustrated with it. I have heard a number of spouses, they might say, well, he knows he needs to do the exercises. So if he doesn't want to do them, I'm not gonna, force him to do it or anything like that. And it's not that way. You're not treating somebody with Parkinson's like a child. It's not that at all. The person isn't being stubborn or lazy or any of that. Dopamine, by the time somebody has any symptoms, a person with Parkinson's has lost 60 to 80% of their dopamine, and we need dopamine for our motivation and our drive. How difficult is it for those of us without Parkinson's to do what we're supposed to do to make our lives better? To eat right, to exercise, to reduce our stress, take the steps needed to get a better night's rest. How hard is it for those of us who have all of our dopamine to do those things? Now, throw Parkinson's on top of it, not enough dopamine, and it is a big struggle, okay? A very big struggle. And so the sensory deficit disorder and the issues with the motivation and drive, these are what make Parkinson's so challenging to treat. If it wasn't for those, honestly, it wouldn't be that hard to treat somebody with Parkinson's. We would teach them how to use intent, show them that they need to become more aware of how they're speaking and how they're walking, and it would be a lot easier. But the sensory deficit and the motivation issues are a big challenge. I want to show you the treatment model that we use at Parkinson Voice Project. And this is for our Speak Out Therapy program. But this is the same type of model that you should use for physical therapy or really for anything that you're trying to improve. So if you look at this diagram, number one, somebody comes in for a speak out evaluation. We determine if they need treatment, okay? And we determine if the program will help them. Then we move on to step 2. This is about gathering the tools that you need to get better. So in terms of speak out therapy, we're going to give you a workbook. If you live in the US, we're going to ship you a workbook. Otherwise, everybody has access to an e-library that has the speak out workbook. It has flashcards, photo cards and conversation cards and all different materials to help you, because we've got to gather the tools that we need to get better. Step 3, there is a video called What is Parkinson's? The information is similar to what you're hearing today, a little bit different and shorter. It's a 25, 30-minute video. All of our patients and their families watch this video. So when you're going through speech or physical therapy, you're going to get educated about it, and we're going to find good information, right? Not the progressive, degenerative, incurable, not that. We want a proactive approach to Parkinson's. Number 4, you move to step 4, you work one-on-one with a speech language pathologist. That is so important. Again, especially important because of the sensory deficit issues and the motivation issues. In speech therapy and speak out therapy, we use a lot of audio recordings, video recordings, because again, the voice to the patient doesn't feel the same way it really is. So the way that we combat that in the one-on-one therapy is to do a lot of audio recordings and video recordings, okay? Then we move on to step 5, and this is important for Parkinson's, is the groups. Let's go full screen because I want to explain something to you. So if, let's say a child was going through speech therapy, okay? A child can't say her R's, and so she goes to speech therapy and she gets better. The whole goal in therapy is to make the production of R automatic. With Parkinson's, the goal in therapy is not to make it automatic, because it's not possible. There's not enough dopamine. It's not physically possible to make the movement or the action or what you want the person to do. It's not possible to make it automatic. And so this is why at Parkinson Voice Project, let's go back to the circle. You notice our program is a circle because it's never ending. There's no such thing with Parkinson's as going through speech therapy and then you're done. It's not like the child who now they can say their R's and they never need therapy again. With Parkinson's, we are constantly fighting against the Parkinson's, against the progressive nature of Parkinson's. So just like George in the video, if you keep up with the exercises, okay, you keep working on it, you recognize when you're not doing your best with the exercises or you've missed a few days, you keep working on it, then you can control that part of Parkinson's. Is it a lot of work? Yes, it is. But it is possible to do it. So to help you with that, after you finish number 4, one-on-one therapy, you go into the group therapy. The group therapy, so you will meet with, if you're meeting online, you might meet with, let's say, 10 other people. It is run by a speech language pathologist who specializes in the speak out therapy program. And so you will attend this group. And this is so valuable because the speech language pathologist, when you attend the group, she is also helping you because of the sensory deficit, because won't always be aware of how your voice is. If she notices a decline in the voice, then she's going to help you and get you back into therapy. That brings us to number 6. Every 3 to 6 months, people with Parkinson's should go back to their speech language pathologist or their physical therapist for a reevaluation. We call it a refresher, okay? And you go back and you see, how is my speech? How is my strength? How is my walking compared to when I finished number 4, the one-on-one therapy? And if it has dropped at all, You go back in, you do the therapy. Maybe when you went through the program, you did not use the e-library, but now you're ready. You're more tech savvy. So we're going to go in during a refresher. We're going to show you and orient you to the e-library, show you how you can use the flashcards to help you. Maybe the first time you went through treatment, your close friends did not attend the What is Parkinson's video. They didn't watch that, and now you're ready for them to do. So at the refresher, you are evaluating the whole process and seeing where do we need to tweak it? What do we need to do better? And then wrapped around the whole circle is the daily speak out home practice exercises every single day. You heard George, if he misses 3 days, he's got to watch out for the biscuit. That's the bad part of Parkinson's. You've got to keep up with it. But the good part is that you can, and that treatment exists. That's the other good part. Treatment exists. At Parkinson Voice Project, we know exactly how to help you with your speech and your swallowing. And even though our clinic is in Texas, we treat patients in Texas, we are training speech language pathologists and graduate students all over the world. So we can help you find a provider. Now, so what I did, I took our treatment model and I applied it to physical therapy. And this is what it would look like. If you went through physical therapy, you would have an evaluation. You would gather your supplies, okay? Do you have a place in your home set up to do your exercises? Do you have a big mirror? Do you have one of those, oh gosh, see, I have word finding too. Like a full length mirror, where you do your exercises at home. Remember the sensory deficit. You may think you're sitting up straight, and if you look in the mirror, you'll recognize that you're not. You may feel like you're raising your arms high enough, but if you have a mirror, you're going to really know whether or not you're doing that. That's the nature of Parkinson's. So you gather your supplies. What supplies does your physical therapist want you to have at home? Do they want you to have the TheraBands? Do you need a good steady chair to do some chair exercises? The mirror, weights, hand weights, whatever the physical therapist has recommended. At Parkinson Voice Project, we give you the tools you need for your speech. But you will probably have to gather yours. Education, talk to your physical therapist. What can I do to educate myself? If the therapist has given you a bunch of handouts and brochures to read, sit down and read them and study them. Then you go through individual physical therapy, one-on-one. Afterwards, you join a group. Every week, boxing, dancing, yoga, other groups to help you. And then every 3 to 6 months, you have a reevaluation one-on-one with the physical therapist. Okay, let's go full screen. I want to talk to you now this is a lot. It's a lot of information, I know. Parkinson Voice Project has developed a document. It's called the Step-by-Step Plan for Living with Intent. And it's on the home page of our website. Don't go to it right now. Afterward, you can download it. It's available for free. And these are suggestions that our patients and our clinical staff have put together. And I just want to show you an example of what it is. This is how you can start taking back control of Parkinson's. I'm going to put on my glasses right now. So the step-by-step plan for living with intent has several different categories. There's a category on how to seek the best medical care, how to manage your medications, physical therapy, speak out therapy, reducing your fall risk, keeping your mind sharp, improving social communication. That's so important, promoting good sleeping habits, reducing stress. So for example, I'm just going to show you one of them. This one has to do with managing your medications. This is a checklist meant for you to use for you and your family. You notice on the right side, it says already doing with intent or needs more intent. And it would be curious if you fill it out and have a family member fill it out. Remember, the sensory deficit, you may not always be aware of things exactly as they are. So these are just some suggestions. Use only one pharmacy for all your medications. Find an accessible and personable pharmacist who is knowledgeable about Parkinson's. I'm so surprised that so many of my patients, when we first start working together, they might be using several different pharmacies. Maybe one pharmacy had a great deal on the medication, and I can understand that, okay? But the problem is, and then the other part I notice is that people don't know their pharmacist. They pick the pharmacy that might be the closest to them, but they really don't know if that pharmacy or the pharmacy team knows anything about Parkinson's. And I think that's so important. The medications, besides exercise, the medications and managing the medications is the most important thing you can do to control Parkinson's. You can't control losing dopamine, but you need to know your pharmacist. You need to meet them. They need to know you by name. You never know if you're going to need something or you've got a question about something. It's so nice to be able to call them. You want to, some other suggestions, make an appointment with your pharmacist to review all your medications, your vitamins and supplements. Pharmacists will do that. You bring everything in. The pharmacist usually say anything you put in your mouth besides food or drink, vitamins, supplements, everything, take it there. See if any of the medications are negatively impacting each other. If you're having trouble swallowing the pills, you can talk to the pharmacist. Do the pills come in a different form? Can you crush them? Do they come in a gummy? Things like that. Find a pharmacy that has convenient hours. How about a pharmacy that delivers? Never know if you'll be in a bind where you need to have these medications delivered to your home. So let's go back full screen. This is what the step-by-step plan is for Living with Intent, and it's on the home page of Parkinson Voice Project. After this presentation, later on in the day, we're going to send you an email with some links, with a link to this video if you'd like to watch it again. Also, every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Central Time, Parkinson Voice Project is hosting Parkinson's speech exercises. They are available to you. There's so much on our website. You need to go to parkinsonvoiceproject.org. There's lots of lectures, not just on speech, but on physical therapy and dance for PD and sleep disorders related to Parkinson's and non-motor symptoms. There's so much. We have a Parkinson's sing-along, and we can also help you find a speak out provider. We are going, we're not ending yet. I'm going to show you a video. It is going to sum up everything that we talked about. It's a video that's part of our training course when we train speech language pathologists in the Speak Out program, but it's going to help you. While that video is playing, I'm going to look at the questions that have come in, and I am happy to stay on and I'll answer the questions. So let's watch this video. Thank you so much.
Parkinson's disease develops when cells in the brain that produce a chemical called dopamine die or become impaired. By the time someone has any symptoms of Parkinson's, as much as 80% of the dopamine in the brain could be depleted. To understand the role of dopamine, let's briefly explain neurons and neurotransmitters. There are billions of neurons in the brain. Neurons receive information from other neurons, process that information, and then send the information to other neurons. In this diagram, you'll notice that there is a gap between the two neurons, which is normal for all humans. This gap prevents information from being passed from one neuron to the next. It's like a short in an electrical circuit. This is where dopamine comes into play. Dopamine is released into the gap and helps transmit information from one neuron to the next. This is why dopamine is called a neurotransmitter. Dopamine specifically helps transmit impulses that control automatic movements. Since people with Parkinson's don't have enough dopamine, it becomes difficult to produce automatic movements, such as walking, talking, and writing. However, there is some good news. People with Parkinson's can control some of their movements with one simple concept: intent. You see, Humans have two basic motor systems that control movement: the extrapyramidal system and the pyramidal system. The extrapyramidal system is responsible for movements we perform automatically without conscious effort, such as blinking, swallowing, and swinging our arms when we walk. The pyramidal system, on the other hand, is responsible for intentional movements, purposeful movements, such as putting on makeup, shaving, or learning to play the piano. Here are some simplified drawings of the brain that show the differences between the two motor systems. Impulses travel from the cortex down to the brainstem and spinal cord. Both motor systems end in the same place, but it's how they reach their final destination that makes them different. In the extrapyramidal system, there's a complex network of neural fibers that stop at various structures within the brain, including the substantia nigra, where dopamine is produced. Think of the extrapyramidal system as a country road that has extra stops along its path. Without enough dopamine, the extrapyramidal system doesn't work very well. This is why automatic movements are disrupted in Parkinson's. But in the pyramidal system, the neural fibers travel straight down without stopping. Think of the pyramidal system as an expressway. Since the neural fibers don't stop to communicate with other structures, this motor system works better for people with Parkinson's. Intentional and deliberate movements are preserved. We activate the pyramidal system when we consciously and purposefully produce a movement. When people with Parkinson's use intent, their speech sounds clearer, they stand up straighter, and their handwriting becomes more legible. All of us have used intent throughout our lives. Think about a past job interview. Did you make a conscious effort to smile and make good eye contact? Did you purposefully stand up straight and speak clearly? You were using intent. Have you ever been driving when suddenly you get caught in a downpour? Did you turn off the radio and put both hands on the wheel? You were using intent. What about when you exercise? Do you work hard to swing your arms, lift your knees higher? Do sit-ups or push-ups with more effort? This is intent. At Parkinson Voice Project, we encourage people with Parkinson's to speak with intent. Say it like you mean it. Speak with gusto. And speak like you're the CEO of a company. When we speak with intent, our speech sounds louder, clearer, and more expressive. And once we learn how to speak with intent, we can start applying this concept to other movements like walking, writing, and living. Up to 89% of people with Parkinson's can struggle with speech production, since speaking is an automatic behavior and the automatic system isn't working well. The early signs of a speech disorder can include a softer voice, a voice that sounds hoarse or scratchy, frequent throat clearing, trailing off at the end of sentences, and inconsistent production of the voice. Some days the voice sounds normal, and other days it doesn't. Here's an example of someone who completed Speak Out.
Have you noticed a change in your voice or speech?
Yes, I have.
What have you noticed?
It's much softer and more difficult to speak. I speak louder, clearer, and with intent.
Here's another example of progress that can be achieved through Speak Out.
Have you noticed a change in your voice or speech?
Yes.
What have you noticed?
Well, often when I'm fatigued, I can hardly talk loud. So I'm louder, I'm more confident, I speak with purpose, and I'm conscious of what I'm saying.
Many of the muscles we use for speaking are also used for swallowing. So speech therapy isn't just about improving one's communication skills.
Well, the voice is getting weaker, but my big problem was swallowing. I had a couple of episodes that were near death, actually. The one I remember specifically is my wife was out of town, and I was having sandwich at the lunch table there at our house, and took a piece of sandwich, and it didn't go down. And so it stopped, and I stopped, couldn't breathe. And I can remember thinking, I said, what a ridiculous way to die, choking on a tuna fish sandwich. Well, I can tell you that before the program, I would notice stuff would get a little stuck, and it would eventually go down, but there was a problem with actually carrying through the swallowing motion. And after the program, I just swallow like a normal person. I don't even think about it anymore. Of course, I'm fairly religious about doing my exercises.
Something interesting about speech therapy for people with Parkinson's is that the goal in treatment is very different from traditional speech therapy. For example, when treating a child, the goal is to make speech production automatic. When a child finishes speech therapy, he won't have to think about articulating the syllables anymore. However, since the automatic system isn't working well for those with Parkinson's, the act of speaking will never become automatic. People with Parkinson's will need to exercise their voices every day and will always have to be intentional about speaking. Before we conclude, there is one more aspect of Parkinson's we want to mention. Besides its impact on automatic movements, dopamine can also affect one's motivational drive to get things done. So even though people with Parkinson's have the ability to get stronger, they may not be motivated to exercise daily and attend the necessary therapy sessions. This can be confusing and even frustrating for spouses and family members. They may even mistake the patient's apparent apathy as laziness or pure stubbornness. People with Parkinson's and their family members need to actively address challenges with motivation and find ways to exercise daily. Maintaining the ability to speak and to swallow depends on this. Friends and family need not feel sorry for the person with Parkinson's. Instead, provide assistance and encouragement by setting goals, establishing routines, and even exercising together. Thank you for taking time to watch this information session. Parkinson Voice Project's vision is that Speak Out will be replicated all over the world so that people with Parkinson's everywhere will learn the benefits of speaking and living with intent. Parkinson Voice Project would like to send you a copy of the step-by-step plan for living with intent. This document helps organize the steps necessary to manage Parkinson's.
Okay, hopefully that video helped to put it all together. And I did look at all the questions and I will answer them now. Before I answer them, I do want to bring up that today is Giving Tuesday. And I normally wouldn't be talking about fundraising right now, but since 2008, Parkinson Voice Project has not charged for any of its therapy services. Can you believe that? Our program is funded primarily through donations from grateful patients and their families, and we have 2 fundraisers a year in June and the end of the year. So it is our holiday challenge time, and if we raise 1.5 million by December 31st, one of our families is going to contribute an additional $500,000. It's a really big deal. We have not met the challenge yet. We have until December 31st. So after this webinar, the survey will pop up, and then later on today, if you are able to make a donation, we would be so grateful. So let me answer the question. Somebody asked about swallowing. It would be great to have more videos about swallowing. I agree. We should make some more videos about swallowing. I do want to mention with Parkinson's, I think it's very important to focus on exercise, but also not to underestimate the value of compensatory strategies. And that is something that I talk about during the practice sessions and in therapy and in the groups. But compensatory strategies are things that you have found that help you with, let's say, for example, you're swallowing. Let's say it's difficult for you to swallow your pills. So a compensatory strategy would be, one would be, instead of taking 5 at a time, I'm going to take 1 at a time. That's why I say don't underestimate the value. I mean, it could be the difference between choking on a pill and not choking. It's a very big deal. I have some patients when I'm first working with them, they might say, oh, well, I take this really big calcium pill, and every time I am about to take it, I go, whoa, I sure hope this goes down okay. We don't want that. Another compensatory strategy for swallowing might be taking your pills with applesauce. That seems to help a lot of people. But again, that's the value of working one-on-one with a professional who can help you, who you can trust and talk about these issues with and give you some suggestions. There was another comment from a woman or from somebody who was misdiagnosed for several years and finally got to a movement disorder specialist and finally got the right diagnosis. A movement disorder specialist is a neurologist who has had special training in movement disorders. If you have the opportunity to be treated by a movement disorder specialist, that would be very important for you. And I want you to think about it this way. General neurologists treat all kinds of disorders, headache, stroke, traumatic brain injury, Parkinson's, other issues. Okay. You want somebody that knows about Parkinson's and has treated enough people with Parkinson's to be able to tell what's happening. Every person with Parkinson's is different. Sometimes Parkinson's is referred to as the snowflake disease because everybody is so different. And the same thing is true, for example, for speech. If you had a grandchild that needed speech therapy, even though I was trained to treat children to the elderly, I've only been working with people with Parkinson's for 26 years. So I am not the best qualified person to treat a child. And that's the same way it is with a movement disorder neurologist versus movement disorder specialist. Someone mentioned that developing a routine, a daily routine, is a way to combat or help with the motivation issues. Absolutely. This person said they do their speech exercises at 10 a.m. and then they go for a walk. It's perfect. Routine is extremely important. Someone asked how to slow down your speech. One of the symptoms of Parkinson's can be very rapid speech or losing control. Remember that the automatic motor system helps to control and coordinate speech. So that's why the speech might be too fast. When you go through speak out therapy, when you project your voice like I'm doing right now, you will slow down your speech. So the key also to working with an expert is knowing that we're not going to tell you to slow down. That is old speech therapy. I know it doesn't make any sense. If you're talking too fast, slow down. But that's not the way it is with Parkinson's. When you project your voice, you will sit up straighter, you will slow down, you will articulate better, you will have better volume, but you need to go through speak out therapy. The next question, brain fog. Somebody asked if that is a normal symptom to Parkinson's. Many people with Parkinson's have what's called mild cognitive impairment, MCI, mild cognitive impairment. With Parkinson's, it can affect your attention, your ability to multitask, word finding, coming up with the right word, managing things that used to be easy for you, balancing a checkbook, managing finances, things like that. Some of this is normal age-related issues. And then with Parkinson's, it can be more. So this is what I want to tell you. We know that physical therapy, the more you exercise physically, the better you are. In fact, there's a number of studies that say you can slow down the progression of Parkinson's if you exercise a lot. So we know that physical therapy and exercise helps. We know that speech therapy and speech exercise helps. What about cognitive exercises? Are you doing cognitive exercises? And I'm going to tell you this. There's lots of different games on your phone and crossword puzzles and things like that that you can do, but you need to do them out loud. You need to say the words out loud. It's one thing to process the information here. It's another thing to be able to get it out your mouth. So when you're doing the crossword puzzles, say the word, spell it, make up a sentence with it as you do it. Reading out loud, so important for adults, not just for adults with Parkinson's. Let me see, 2 more questions and then we're done. Is shortness of breath a part of Parkinson's? Well, we talk about breath support for speech. So if you're talking about trailing off at the end of your sentences, feeling like you don't have enough breath when you're speaking, that's one thing, and that can be common with Parkinson's and can improve with speak out therapy. Shortness of, and then also if we are not strong enough, we haven't been exercising, maybe we might get a little short of breath when we start to exercise again. But shortness of breath, like a pulmonary absolutely can help, but you also need a professional that works in that area. So you want to work with an occupational therapist. And so a physical therapist, think of reducing your risk of falls, improving your balance, improving your physical strength. Think of an occupational therapist as someone that can help you with activities of daily living. Dressing, bathing, shaving, eating, all of those things. An occupational therapist will know, hey, maybe there is a special razor that has a special grip that can help people with Parkinson's. And then if you combine that compensatory strategy with intent, shaving might be better, or maybe an electric razor. I'm not an occupational therapist, so I don't know about that. All right. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm very grateful to you, and we will send you an email with some links later. And if you will please take the survey, it'll pop up as soon as Julie closes out this webinar. Have a wonderful day, wonderful holiday season, and thank you for helping us to meet the holiday challenge. Thank you.